You're live.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We are learning the fourth class of Bereshis, where the order that we're in right now is, I'm skipping ahead. How much ahead? I'm skipping towards the end of the first chapter. So what you have in front of you, I didn't actually bring any books with me, any sfarm with me, but you have the fourth chapter, the fourth class. At the top of your page is the end of chapter 1, middle end of chapter 1. Actually, is the end of chapter 1. Actually, we have a little bit more. And we're going to talk about the creation of animals and the creation of man. So we can get a good understanding, or somewhat of a good understanding of what this is about. And most importantly, the obvious questions of the angelic beings who's creating man. It's let us make man. It's going to be a number of questions we have. What I brought you tonight is I tried taking as many of the English sources that I could find. So what I gave you is very few Hebrew. Everything I gave you, I believe, has only English. We're going to try to analyze it ourselves to try to figure out what's going on. So we have to see some of the problems that we have. There are going to be a number of problems that we have in the Psukim that bother us and that bothered many of the commentaries, and we try to pick them out ourselves and see if we can come up with some answers and see what their answers are. So we'll start off at the top of your page. Vayomer Elokim. In chapter 1, God is always referenced as Elokim, which is a reference of judgment. They don't ask this question in particular, but Elokim, it literally is a plural word, but they always reference to that of judgment. In the Hebrew, it is a plural word. That's never concern for the commentaries, nor is it concern for the polemics, the Christian polemics, all the people that try to go against the Torah and create their own ideals. Elokim is always a judgment-based idea. And in this case over here, it's not an issue. In chapter 2, when you start reading about the creation of man, that's when Hashem is added. What we call Hashem, it's the four-letter name of God, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. That's added in chapter 2. But in chapter 1, you don't see anything of that. There's a strict justice, as we'll quote it, as man being created. But before we even get to man, it's everything else is created in the same way. And now, so Vayomer Elokim. So here it says, we translate it as God. This is taken from Chabad. These English is taken from Chabad.org at the top. 2 sites that I used to get text from today. This one was, the top is Chabad, with this first page is Chabad.org, and the remaining pages from a site called Al HaTorah, which has a lot of them in Mefarshim, some of them in English. So we see over here, Vayomer Elokim, God, which represents justice, says, Totzei Haaretz Nevesh Chaya Lemina, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind, cattle and creeping things, and the beasts of the earth according to their kind. And so it was so. Vayichein. So God said, let there be, and so it was, that on this day, not only is man created, but other things are created. Now, if man was such a unique creature, you would think that man has to be created on a different day. Right? I would guess that if birds are on a different day, so then man should be on a different day entirely. If man is entirely unique to that extent, so why create at the same time that cattle is being created? Okay? But we also see it, not only is it at the same time that cattle is being created, but also at the same time that remes, that creeping things are created as well. And the beasts of the earth according to their kind. Chayso eretz. Okay? That's verse number 24. Second pasuk that we have over here. And so therefore God did this. Elokim did this. It's Chayas Aretz Lamina, that's HaBehema. He made the beasts of the earth, he made the cattle, and all the creeping things of the ground. And then God saw, Vayar Elokim Kitov, God saw that it was good. Okay, next verse. Vayomer Elokim. So now we just had 2 creations of species that were created during this time. And now we have a new species. The species is called the species of man. Vayomer Elokim Na'aseh Adam B'Tzalmenu. So you're going to look at this and ask the question, what is different over here in the creation of man? Where in verse 26 it says, let us make man in our image, B'Tzalmenu, Kidmusenu, after our likeness. So there's 2 words here that sound to be redundant. Vayirdu b'dgas hayam, and they'll rule over the fish of the sea, uva opa shamayim, and the birds in the heaven, uva behema. And not only that, those things were created a couple of days ago, but also on animals, v'chol haaretz, and on the land itself, v'chol haremes harames haaretz, and all those creeping things that teem all over the earth. So we see in verse 26 over here that God says man is going to be created. In all previous creations, it doesn't really say what they're going to do necessarily. Maybe by one of them, it does say. But within the definition of the creation of man, it says that there's going to be that Vayirdu b'dgasayam. They're going to rule over. That is the creation of man. It's not just about creating man. It's about the creation of man in the rulership position. Man has to rule over something over here. Vayivra. And therefore, Elokim created man, B'Tzalmo, in his image, B'Tzelem Elokim Baroso. In the image of God, he created him. Zachar Nukeva Barosam, he created them, male and female. So we're just reading through the verses, which reminds you that some of the things that we've learned before, or that you're familiar with, contradict with what we have over here. Okay, just this verse alone should give you probably 3 contradictions to what you're familiar with.
It says, "Let us make man in our image."
Our image.
And then he made man in his image.
In the image of God, he created him. So, who is our image? And who is the image of God that we're talking about? And then,
God and angels.
God and angels, we'll see. And then it says he created man and woman together. Okay? But we know from chapter 2 that man and woman are not created together. Right? Man and woman are not created together. He puts man to sleep, takes out a rib, creates woman from that. So what does this mean over here? Created man and woman together. Classic commentaries say, okay, chapter 1 is just giving you a general overview. Chapter 2 is giving you the expanded version of what it is. But do I need an expanded version? Might as well just tell it to me right now. Just tell me what's going on right now. So 27 is particularly confusing to us for a number of different reasons that we already see over here. Pasuk Chav Ches 28. And God blessed them. Elokim. Vayomer Lam, and he said to them, Peru Revu Mulos Aretz. Go, multiply, procreate, multiply, fill the land, Vikivshua, and overtake it. Uredu b'dgasayam, rule over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the sky, and all the beasts that tread upon earth. Okay? So, in 26, he said what we're going to do. In 28, he does it, but he doesn't do it. He gives them a blessing to do it. So really, what is the need for 26? Why do we need verse 26 for it at all? Do you see any need for it? It should be, basically, God says, let's do it, right? Let's create man. Why is why does the definition of the creation of man talk about what man's role is to do? Just say, 28. He blessed them. And he said, go overtake the land, go overtake the world. So 26 is almost in the definition of what man is. The definition of man is not a command. This is the essence of what man is. Got it? With me? Question? Good. 29.
But does it mean that that's the only species that have consciousness?
Consciousness?
Consciousness. Yeah.
There's another verse. You have a chumash here? Tell you have a chumash here? There's another verse. Do you have one? Has Hebrew? Hebrew on it or just English?
No, just English.
I need Hebrew. Okay. I want to see if there's another verse that discusses about other animals. Okay. While he's getting that, 29. And God said, "Be able to give me every seed-bearing herb which is upon the surface of the entire earth, and every tree that has seed-bearing fruit, it will be yours for food." At this point, what do we see? Man is vegetarian. Straight up. Man is vegetarian at this point, and that changes by the times of Noah. So those of you that are vegetarian, you'll say, like, I'm trying to remake myself like Adam Harishon, but man was originally vegetarian. It was not given the ability to eat meat till later. Till later. But little do you know is that you were created after, right? You were created after. Okay, so let's just see if there's another verse that has this. Okay, so what you have in verse 22, which is not here, is that when it comes to creating the sea creatures, God blessed them with saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters and the seas, but the fowl shall increase on the earth." It was even more on the 5th day. Okay? So I'm not sure if we have any particular scenario that actually discusses rulership, except when we actually get to man. No, that's it, right?
And the serpent was created with the animals, or between
serpent
after animals
is
between...
probably animal, or it's probably the same day. It would assume to be the same. It could be a creeping thing, but at that time it wasn't creeping. So it would seem to be that it's considered an animal of some sort, because it's a nachash. It's called arum mikol habehema.
But it should have been like
It's called the nachash was the arum mikol chayas hasada, wild beast of the field. So it is considered a beast of the field.
and should have been a king of the animals, right?
Okay,
Should
fine.
rule all the animals.
Fine.
No, fowl are just birds, right?
Fowl is generally referring to birds. Yeah.
Just all kinds of birds.
Right, all kinds of winged creatures usually. Right? Okay, 29. So in 29 is we talk about that everyone is going to be able to eat vegetation. And then perhaps maybe that is the correlation of bringing up the animals over here. Why are animals brought up on this thing? But everybody here can only eat. We're all eating the same food. Except for the teeming things, the creepy crawly things, they might be eating something else. But we're all eating the same food. We're all eating the vegetation that grows. Well, the in 30, all the beasts of the earth and all the fowl of the heavens and everything that moves upon earth in which there was living spirit, every green herb to eat, it was so. So it's commanded to you, man, and commanded to everything else. Okay, number 31, verse Lamed Aleph. And God saw everything was great. Everything that made, and behold, was very good. Very good. And behold, it was evening, it was daytime, and it is the 6th day. Okay, so what we're going to address tonight are a number of the issues that we have with that of the creation of man, and the role that God plays in the creation of man, and that other beings may play in the creation of man, and how we deal with Christian polemics that try to use these verses to try to show that there's multiplicity of gods. Okay, so that's why we're going to take a look at Rashi is the first one over here that you have on your page. Rashi suggests the following. Rashi on your page, I only give you the English. I did not print out the Hebrew. It's hard to format it with it. So we're just going to go with Rashi in English over here. So Rashi says as follows. Let us make man. From here, we look about the humility of the Holy One. Rashi says that the whole role, the whole reason why God writes it in this way, why the Torah is written, again, our concern that we have, that we're dealing with, is verse 26. Let us make man in our image and our likeness. We want to know what an image is. We'd like to know what a likeness is. And then it says in 27, and God created man in his image. In the image of man, he created him. So we have the issue of B'Tselmenu, in our image. When it comes to creation, it says the actual creation in 27, he created him in his image. So we're dealing...
What about likeness?
And we have likeness that we got to deal with, right? Kid Musenu, right? It's not mentioned in 27. It's a great point you're making, right? Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi says from here, we learn that humility of the Holy One, blessed be. Since man was created in the likeness of the angels and they would envy him, he consulted them. Says Rashi, the reason why it says plural, let us make man, us is a reference to God and the angels. Who are the angels? When were they created? They were created earlier. The angels are created earlier, and what's unique, what Rashi is going to present over here, it's not presented directly with Rashi, but others are going to present this idea that what Rashi is telling us over here is, what is the correlation between God and angels? What's the correlation? What does God and angels have to do with anything? What is the good comparison that you can make to God and angels? Is some element, perhaps, of creativity. Some element of creativity, maybe even some element of free will. We're going to see that man is created in the image of God. Well, what is that image of God? Does God have any physical image? We would have a problem with that if God had any physical image, because that's one of our tenets of faith, that there is no physical image to God. So what could it possibly be referring to, if not the aspects of the mind, if you will, the free will, or anything that's associated with intellect, something which separates man from that of animals. We'll see that in some of the other commentaries over here. So Rashi says, and they would envy, and since man was created in the likeness of the angels, and they would envy him, he consulted them. Okay? They would envy him. It's a reference to the angels would envy man, would be jealous. So therefore, God says, I'm going to consult the angels when it comes to the creation of man.
Is it? Remember you mentioned before, so angels, it's just like souls, right? So the
Angels are not souls of humans. Angels are separate creations. Ghosts are souls of humans.
So angels are not souls.
Angels are separate. Angels are a separate creation. That's not of human likeness.
Really?
Well, it's not. No, it's a form that has no space to it. They're bound by time, but not bound by space, and they're a creation unto itself. Every human being has an angelic force associated with it, but they're not humans. But they're like humans, as Rashi is telling us that they're similar. They're going to be created in our likeness. Who? Mine, says God, and yours. You angels. That's how we're going to create this man. It's going to be similar to the way you live.
So the idea of guardian angel is true?
The concept is that every soul, every human being has a spiritual force, and every nation has a spiritual force. So the Ramban writes about it that every nation has a spiritual force, and when that spiritual force is destroyed, that nation is now going to just fall apart, and it will cease to exist. It will just be swallowed up into others, which happens to all the other nations, as they just somehow just fall apart. Like the country may exist, but the nationhood and the power of that nation, somehow the angelic force gets destroyed, loses its power, and then the nation will fall.
So the angelic world were before actually human world was.
So it seems like that it's before human beings are put on the earth. We have to ask the obvious question which we presented before, and that was in chapter 1 you see man is created, he created them. In chapter 2 then man suddenly, and then other forms. So that issue that we deal with is where did all these other human beings come from? You know, man is on the earth, and then they sin, and the whole thing, and like the human being, where they all come from? It's hard to answer that question unless we're saying it's not the spiritual man that's being created now. Prehistoric man, it's an approach. It's a difficult approach, but it's an approach that's taken in to explain that idea. But over here, we're going to be talking about, we don't know what kind of man we're talking about, because chapter 2 is going to bring us the spiritual side of man, where God breathed a breath of life into him. So there are a couple of philosophical approaches on that we've discussed in the past. Chapter 1 is man as a human being that does work, a human being that has power, that can overtake. Alex, I want to explain this concept to you. In chapter 1, some present, that we're in chapter 1 here, that when it says the creation of man, all it says, he created man in his image, and he blessed him. He said, be fruitful, fill the earth, and overtake everything. But in chapter 2, it says he breathed a breath of life into him, into his nostrils, and now he was a living being, and he was a speaking being. Where in chapter 1, it doesn't say any of that. So some suggest, Rav Soloveitchik has a long explanation on this, some suggest chapter 1 describes man as a human being that does not think of godliness, he just thinks of power and overtaking and ruling over things. Whereas chapter 2 discusses man who's trying to find himself. He's trying to figure out what his purpose is, what his meaning of life is all about, what his spirituality is all about. That's presented really in chapter 2. We see that chapter 1 doesn't discuss any of that. It just says, be fruitful, multiply, and beat everybody up and take over the world. That's chapter 1. So chapter 2 describes a little bit more in depth about man as a human being that's looking for meaning, looking for purpose, looking for a godliness inside of him.
So the soul, like neshama, right, was in the man, inserted in the man at the very beginning, and then later on, the man got a second part of it.
So it's not clear. It's not clear. I'm just saying that's Rav Soloveitchik's prosot, right? His presentation is that man has two roles that he plays in life. And chapter 1 is to present one idea, and chapter 2 is to present another idea. But it's really the same man. One idea of man is that he is what we call utilitarian. He does physical things, grunt work. He builds cities and fortifies and fights in wars and things like that. And chapter 2 is the thinking man that's looking for a deeper meaning and purpose in life. But it would seem that the soul is infused already at some point. It's just not clear here. Why is the soul not infused in chapter 1? That is the big question. It's only noticeable in chapter 2.
So each nation is going to have an angel, and like 70 nations, 70 angels. Were all the 70 angels were created already?
Seems so.
So it was planned that there's going to be 70 nations?
It would seem so. I don't know if any of I think all angels in the beginning of creation.
And just in case, I don't know if it's ever happened, if the nation is disappearing, like this nation is completely disappearing, if the angels is going to die too?
Well, from the Ramban's explanation in Bamidbar, it says their angel was removed from them. No longer has connection to the people. So you can you're wondering what to do. Moshe said, don't worry about those giants in there. Their angel was removed from them. They have no power anymore. You'll be able to wipe them out, no question. You think they're great and they're big, they're strong. They're puppets. They're puppets, and their marionette, the owner, left. And so they look like they're strong and doing everything, but you can come in and wipe them out because they lost their power. That's my explanation of how the Ramban would suggest it, that their angelic force that controls over them has lost its power, it does not have any power, and therefore you'd be able to wipe them out.
And what's the purpose of this angel now?
The angel is a spiritual force. Everything that exists in this world has a spiritual counterforce that guides it. Everything.
But
the Mishkan above, the Mishkan below, everything has a counterforce.
But for the nation, if this nation disappears and the angels here, he's removed, or like he's somewhere
from the power of a nationhood. There's this particular power of the nation is. The individual, you're a human being. You still have a breath of life.
No,
You still,
I'm talking from the nation, because if the nation stopped existing,
yeah.
so what's happened to the angel? If the angel still exists,
I'm telling you, the angel, it says, Sar Tzila Me'aleihim. The angelic force has been removed from them. Whether the angel exists, I don't know, but it no longer has the connection to its people. Okay, so Rashi tells us over here, back then on our page, for those of you that are following us, we're over here. Okay. So Rashi says like this. Second line of Rashi at the end of the line. And when he judges kings, he consults with his heavenly household. For so we find regarding Achab that Micha said to him, I saw the Lord seated on his throne, and all of the hosts of heavens were standing by him on his right and on his left. Now, do left or right apply to God? There's no physicality applying to God. Rather, what it means is that the angels were standing on the right to defend, and these angels standing on the left to prosecute. Likewise, the pasuk in Daniel, by the decree of the destructive angels is the matter, and by the word of the holy ones is the edict. Here too, he took counsel with the heavenly household. He said to them, among the heavenly beings there are some in my likeness. If there are none in my likeness among the earthly beings, there will be envy among the creatures of the creation. So this is what the Medrash says. The Rashi's quoting over here. He said to them again, among the heavenly beings there are some in my likeness. If there are none in my likeness among the earthly beings, there will be envy amongst the creatures. Very difficult to understand, but the simple meaning of what it says over here is that God creates functional creatures that have to be in his likeness. And there are in the angels, and there are in man. And if we wouldn't create that, it would create a major problem. Not because jealousy necessarily, the terminology is envy, but the powers cannot interact together. That's what it would seem, that the powers themselves can't interact when you have an angelic force that has zero correlation to a physical force. So they have to both be in their likeness. The angels and man have to be in the likeness of God. Why the angels have to be in the likeness of God, it's a whole other experience as to what their purpose is and how they control things that exist within the world. But this is part of God giving over his goodness to the world, it would seem, to the angels and to man, that if the angels have that power, man needs that power as well, and this will also correlate angelic beings to that of man, so they have a connection with one to the other. Otherwise, there's nothing to do. They have nothing to do with each other.
Does that mean that angels have independent thought?
So there is an aspect of angels that do have independent thought. We'll see it later on. It's actually in this past week's Parsha Vayera, when Rashi points out that the angels were punished because they came to save Lot. When they came to save Lot, they said, come because we're going to destroy the city. It's not us, it's God that's destroying the city. So the angels were somewhat punished because they misspoke. What do you mean they misspoke? So a simple answer I'd say is, they weren't angels at that time. At that time they were human beings, but they were still angels, right? They're still angels at that time, and therefore there is some element of free will. It's a whole discussion about to the level of free will. And obviously they have certain abilities of praise, certain abilities of intellect, leaving our free will question aside, but there is some element of free will. Rashi continues in the second paragraph. Huh?
Angels do that?
So, I can't say that they have the same level of free will of man, but they have some element of free will. Okay? Let us make man. Even though the angels did not assist him in creation, and there's an opportunity for the heretics to rebel, Scripture did not hesitate to teach proper conduct and the trait of humility. Says Rashi, what is the ultimate goal, why it says it here? To teach you how to be a humble person. That's how you have to do it. You have to become a humble person. What does it mean to be a humble person? We're talking the we, right? We're giving a class tonight. We went and we bought some food for the class. We talking we. Who's the we? As we say, I don't know, I grew up, that was always the terminology, what you mean we, kimosabi, right? If anyone grew up with that, I didn't, because my parents grew up with it, right? So, but that's how I always go, what do you mean we, kimosabi, right? I mean, we, that's what I mean, we, right? So, always, the we is always a reference to plural. It's a sense of humility. I don't do things by myself. No, it's all of us together. We're a complete unit over here. So, this is what he says. Rashi is very poignant in the Hebrew. I just want to share with you the Rashi and what we learn. One amazing thing that you learn from this Rashi. There's always going to be times there are going to be people that are heretical in their views, and the heretics are always going to try to find something so they can promote their beliefs. God says it's irrelevant that they're going to do that. We know they're going to do that, but it's more important that I teach the non-heretics, the believers. It's more important that I teach the believers certain ways of living and let the heretics do what they need to do. Because what they're going to do is they're always going to look for a way. Oh, you left an opening for them. Now you put it in plural. Now they're going to say that there's multiple gods and all these things. That's fine. I'd rather leave that to make sure that you understand levels of humility, that the believers understand levels of humility. But they're gonna say this and they're gonna say that. Well, you know what? They're gonna do it anyway. They're gonna find some way to do it. If it's not this verse, they're gonna look for another verse to be able to create it. But it's more important that the believers should understand that you have to learn levels of humility. So Rashi, I just want to pull up on the Rashi in the Hebrew. We'll just continue on as we look through that. Chapter 1. So it continues on and says over here, Scripture did not hesitate to teach proper conduct and trait of humility, that a great person should consult with and receive permission from a smaller one. That's humble. To be humble is you ask other people below you, so what do you think we should do? Whether I'm going to do it or not, it's a separate thing. Had it been written, I shall make man, we would not have learned that he was speaking with his tribunal, but rather to himself. And the refutation to the heretics, Rashi's terminology is, the refutation to the heretics is a medrash that uses, or the Gemara uses a similar terminology. Let me just get it. Where's the refutation? Read in English first. Refutation to the heretics is written alongside it in the following verse, and God created, and it does not say, and they created. So that's a clear understanding of Rashi. Rashi says, you worried about heretics. The reason why it says it in plural is to teach you must be humble. And by the way, heretics, look at the next verse. The next verse doesn't say we created man. It said, and I created man. And God created man. Okay, so that's Rashi over there. Just to give you the terminology that I wanted to find for you. Chuvas haminim ksuva betzido. Understand that whenever there's going to be heretical views, the answer to the heretical views will be right next door. It's going to be right there. They don't want to open their eyes. They want to limit themselves to see this over here and not see the next thing. Rashi is pointing out to us that when heretics come, they have an agenda, and usually bitzido, it's going to be right there. The answer to their question is going to be right there, but they choose not to want to know what that actually is. That's Rashi's words. Okay.
So does it apply to the same thing when these 70 rabbis translated to Greek Torah to Greek?
They translated
it says Elohim created something instead of saying like Bereshit Ra, like so they would understand that two different gods were creating something. So I think that's they changed it on purpose. They put the Elohim first instead of translating, and they could have think that the two gods created something, that there were two gods,
right,
instead of one.
Yes. Okay, so Tali asked the question of Bitzalmenu Kid Musenu. So at the second half of the page, next page over, you see in our image, Rashi says, in our form, and we need to know what that form is. And after our likeness is to understand and to discern. Kid Musenu is to be able to understand and to be able to discern. So it's not even talking about free will now. It's to be able to have a deeper level of understanding. This is what God wants in the creation of man. A human being should have a deeper level of understanding. And they should rule over the fish, subservience basically. If he merits, he rules over the beast and the cattle. If he does not merit, he becomes subservient to them, and the beasts rule over him. Okay, that's what the Medrash says, Genesis Rav over there, that depending how man works, you will either become subservient to the animals, or they will become subservient to you. Okay, let's take a look at the next commentary. The next commentary that we have is the Bechor Shor. So Bechor Shor writes, we're going to skip around a little bit of it. Bechor Shor writes, in our image after our likeness. Awe-inspiring. What is this image and likeness? Awe-inspiring in order to be a ruler and authority over all. So what he's telling us is a different interpretation. The way Rashi explained to us is a form. Well, a form is a problem for us because God has no form. So when he says in our image, it means the image is like we say to someone, what is that image? What do you take from that image of that person? It means he presents an image of someone who's awe-inspiring, presents an image of someone who is a true leader, who has tremendous power, in order to be a ruler and authority. And God's saying to man, or to his angels, or to whomever, that the goal of man being created this way, in this image and likeness, is that he can have a level of power. Not like the lion, or like whatever the animal is going to be in the field. This is to really command and rule over the entire earth. The verse does not mean that one is physically similar to the other one, for one may not ascribe any image, figure, or portrayal to what is above, as is written, since you saw no shape. And to whom then can you liken me, to whom can be compared? So he's presenting the obvious issue. How could God has no form? The Torah tells us that God says God has no form. So how can you say he's creating a form? He's not. It's the value of what he brings to the table, we'll call it. It's the strength, if you will. The image as to who he is, and to be a ruler and an authority.
God made people on his image.
So the question, so he's answering, image doesn't mean physical image. Image means, just like when I say to you, what does this person represent to you? You say, oh, he represents someone who's calm. He represents someone who's a leader, right? That's the image. The image is what you think about when you think about that person. So it's something that's more, I guess we call it emotional. How would you call it? What's the word? He calls it awe-inspiring. Spiritual, something like that, right? Next paragraph. Concerning what is written upon the semblance of throne, there was the semblance of a human form. So it's talking about the prophet of Yechezkel. And there he presents his image appeared to him in this vision, like a dream that appears to him, but that he cannot see clearly. Why? Because Yechezkel cannot possibly see God, because there is no image. The vision had no substance, no definite shape, but appeared to him like a man, for he could not express something that he was not used to seeing. So Yechezkel, when seeing what we quote-unquote call the image of God, it could not have possibly been God. What he had to do is he had to take something that he'd be used to seeing. Any prophet that can see can only see that which his eyes has once seen before. He cannot see something that it never experienced before, and therefore when he sees it, he sees some sort of likeness of man. It's like every time they say, like, when they bring God in a movie, or whatever it is. We're listening to it on tape with my kids on a CD, and God said, Moses, you must come forth. Is that the way God always speaks? Is that always how it happens in a microphone, like he's covering his mouth? Is that we always assume that that's what it's be? Who knows, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is that what it's supposed to be? So over here, the only thing we can think of is what our image is, something that's booming, something that means very strong to us. So that's why we associate it with it. So when Yechezkel has his vision, he can only associate it to whatever it is. So continue on there. But it appeared to him like a man, for he could not express something that he was not used to seeing. God and his accompanying angels appear to men in any guise in which they choose to reveal themselves to human beings. Okay, you hear this? God and his angels, they choose how they want to appear themselves to human beings. That's why it says the Talmud, Elijah appeared to him in the guise of a horseman. Okay, Elijah is part man, part angelic, because he didn't die and he goes up to heaven. He can appear as anything that he wants, and he can appear as a horseman, whatever that is. It is as if God said, I shall describe or reveal myself in any manner that I wish. Therefore, he did not mean the phrase in our image after our likeness, except with regards to inspiration of awe. Al derech ha'iyom, how you should be awestruck when you would see God. So God says, we're going to create man in our image, can only mean that other creatures will have awe, will be in awe of man. It also means man will be in awe of man. If you think about the human body and all the things that we have, there's a certain element of awe. If you look at, I guess we'll look at Roman times or Greek times, where they looked at man as this image of everything, of the most powerful thing that could possibly exist. That's the awe that man is created in. And that's what you understand through many generations, where they took the human body, the physique, the physical side of the human mind was such a powerful image that they had. Why? Because it's given in that way. Man is created in this way that everyone should have a certain element of awe when they see that. That's what the Bechor Shor is writing of what this verse actually means. We're not talking about man and his intellect. We're talking about man as the royal warrior, as the most powerful thing. A number of weeks ago we had a rabbi that was over at our house, and he said he loves watching football. So I love watching American football because you look at the physique of these people and it's like, who made these things? These people they're like beasts. They're like these massive giants, and the things that they're able to do, the way they leap over people and just bowl them over. He was just like awed that like I'm also a human being, but I ain't like that human being. And nothing I do is ever going to make me like that human being. It's like I'm a rabbi, and they are not. They are football players. But people look at these people and to that level of that image. And even though the awe is not the same, nonetheless, Scripture compares it as a person would say, this flees among the fleas like a king among people. Even though they're not similar to each other, and more so in this case. But we're comparing the greatest of human beings to that of a sense of godliness, the greatest of spiritual beings that could be. Skip down one paragraph, please. The reason Scripture chose plural term is because it is common for the Torah to the Scripture to use a plural form for a singular antecedent. How do you translate an antecedent?
Something before.
Right?
Like in
Meaning here, like he says, similarly concerning man, it says, they shall rule. Right? They shall rule is a reference to, you need to know what we're talking about. The they, like we said, the plural we. Right? The they is referring to the concept of.
all kings, they say we.
We. Yeah, so he's saying they. Should a Christian
Plural.
say to you that this is the use of the plural form referred to the Trinity, and the word Adam in this verse has the meaning of homonym in the vernacular Latin, and this refers to all human beings who are born, and therefore it says they shall rule, because that is a simple explanation of the verse. Answer to this person this way: concerning only Shmuel, Samuel, did the woman say, I see divine beings coming up from the earth. That's it. Everything else is referring to one. There's nothing else. So this is the terminology that's used, but it's not actually a reference to plurality. So then he gives in the brackets over here some other examples. It says, the sons of Palu were Eliav. What do you mean the sons? There's only one son. The sons of Dan were Chushim. It's only one person. So oftentimes it'll use a plural, and that plural is only referring to an archetype, let's say general type, and it's not actually referring to plural itself. Okay?
Well, sons doesn't just mean son. It could mean grandson and great.
But it doesn't. It says, and the sons of Dan were Chushim. That's it. Period. No more.
What does Hushim mean? Is
That's
that
his
the
name. That's his name. Chushim ben Dan. Right? That's it.
No, when it talks about the form, and I think in Haggadah, when it says one of the rabbi, and probably not one of them, when they went to this like Merkava level, they saw God sitting in a throne, an angel next to him, like.
But again, how could they see God sitting in a throne?
That's what I'm saying, like,
so
yeah.
we just said that it didn't mean God sitting in a throne.
That's what they see, right? That's how
They see
perception-
their image of what they could imagine it to be.
It's a perception. Their
Perception of a human being, a really big human being, or whatever it is, but it can't actually be God because God doesn't have that form. So whatever you see, a vision, any prophecy, a vision or a prophecy can only see what the naked eye can see.
But
Okay.
God probably can take any image.
But he's not. But when he gives a prophecy to a man, he only gives a prophecy so that man can see what he understands. Because if I give you a vision and it looks like modern art and it's all over the place, you're going to come back. What would you see in that vision? I don't know. I just saw a bad painting. You have no idea what you saw, right? It has to be something that you can interpret. So man has to be able to interpret on his level. That's what the Gemara says. I'll just take your question. The Gemara says it, and the Maral explains that when it comes to all prophecy can only be something that your eye can understand of what it means, so you can interpret it. When it comes to Olam Haba, the world to come, which has no physical form that we can compare to this world, so a prophet cannot give a prophecy about the world to come. They can, the Torah leaders, they who delve into the depths of spirituality beyond physical world, they can have a better understanding of what the world to come is, but the prophet can't actually see that in a vision. Right.
So when we're talking about creating an image of God, and it's more like awe-inspiring and not like an actual.
Well, it's not God, of man. Of man. That man is going to be created in the image of God, meaning it's an awe-inspiring human being.
Right.
Okay.
So are we also talking about other characteristics, like mercy and gratitude? No. Are we?
So, and not in chapter 1. Not over here. And over here, there's simply one command given over to man, and that is rule over the fish, the beast, and everything else. So we're not talking about mercy over here. We're just talking about ruling over.
So.
Chapter 2, you'll see that.
But when we're creating the image, you're saying an image only in the parameters of this chapter.
Which is why the Bechor Shor says over here, he's taking your point and he's saying that this form of image can only be that of awe-inspiring, because nothing else is mentioned over here. It's only about the awe-inspiring, that the human being is awe-inspiring.
It's all about human beings. I mean, we have a very small percentage of humans that are awe-inspiring, right? Like the football players.
So awe-inspiring has to be a reference to all of man, not just the ones with the excellent physique, right? You know, meaning the guy who sits on his couch with a beer belly, you know, and doesn't get off his couch, he's also awe-inspiring. It's not about physique. It's about the essence of what man is that he can be that awe-inspiring. Whether he can scare a dog away, whether he can do other things to that of the land itself, because he's also going to take over the land, not just things that have life, he's also going to rule over the land. So it's that awe-inspiring image that every human being is actually instilled with, is that I'm a human being. Like, I have purpose here. I'm going to do stuff. And that doing stuff is a lot about science and technology and all these other things that they built. Where every other creature, you see rudimentary things that are being built, nothing in magnificent form. But man has that. There's the awe-inspiring aspect of man that's presenting over here. So if you go down 2 more paragraphs, we have that bold line there. Therefore, he said, let us make man, let us fashion him so that he might rule. In a similar way, one might say, let us make an officer a king. Although one is not creating him, but rather merely consenting to make him an officer or a king. So the angels made him a ruler, because they agreed to it. That's what it means. For that reason, the Torah says, let us make, concerning the issue of sovereignty over the world. But concerning creation, it said, God created man, not them. And the man which God fashioned, again, also in the singular, these verses are in singular for the Creator, solitary and unique, may his name be blessed. Okay? And lastly, on this point over here, one should respond to the Christians' foolishness who claim that the scripture employs a plural form to hint at the Trinity of 3 parts by blunting their teeth with the following refutation. If you agree that the 3 of them are equal, and of one mind, and all share in one power, why is it necessary for one part to say to the other, let us make man, as if to inform or invite the other? Would it not have been the intention of all of them? Why did one part presume to invite the others? The verse says, God said, let us make man. The meaning being that one invites the other. If this is the case, they are not of one mind, and according to the Christian claims, the text should have said, and they said, let us make man. But it doesn't say that. It says, and he said to them, let us make man. Which would imply that each of them sat together with one thought. Their words proved to be vain and empty. So that's, again, part of what his goal is to refute what the Christians will tell us over here about the concepts of multiplicity of God, of different forms of God, and it can only be from one Hashem. Therefore, let us make man is about the image, is about the awe that we see in man, and when it comes to actual creation, God creates it himself. Okay? Okay, take a look. The Rashbam is a quick read over here at the bottom of that page. Vayomer, God said to his angels, let us make man. So one also finds God consulting his angels, the story of Micha. And if you continue on B'Tzalmeinu, in our image, in the image of angels, a little bit different now. We said before the image of God, and now we're learning that according to the Rashbam, he says no. When God says, let us make man in our image, it means in the image of angels, which means angels and human beings have similar images. Okay, we learn this in Torah and Tefillah, that a human being is lower than an angel, but the quality of an angel who has a limited level of free will, a human being, if he works on his free will, through prayer, through Torah and the like, he can elevate his status above that of angelic beings. So we are somewhat created with a certain holy nature associated with all mankind, a sense of goodness instilled of all mankind, like angels have to do God's will. But because we have greater free will, we can lose that and we can go further down. But with that greater free will, we can elevate ourselves above angelic beings. And therefore, over here, according to the Rashbam, he's saying, let us create man in our image. It's in the image of angels, not the image of God. Image of angels. Continue on the bottom of the page. Gemara in Sanhedrin 38b. Rav Yochanan says, it's quoted in Ein Yaakov. I didn't find it directly in the Gemara on it, but the Ein Yaakov quotes. Rav Yochanan says, anytime the Torah says, anytime in the Bible where it says, from where the heretics attempt to prove the heresy, such as there's more than one God. The response to their claim is alongside them, as we said earlier, which means every time they try to disprove, the answer is right there. In the immediate vicinity of the verse states that God said, "Let us make man in our image," implying the plural, but then it states, "And God created man in his image," implying the singular. The verse states, "And God said, Come, let us go down and confound their language," let us. But it also states, "And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower." The verse states in the plural that God was revealed to him when he fled from the face of his brother, but it also states, "To God who answered me in the times of distress." Okay? Proving too that every verse has this correlation that you're going to try to prove that it's referring to multiplicity, and we're showing you that it's only singular. Continuing on, Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rav. At the time that the Holy One, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, praised be He, was about to create man, for those that were not in Shul on Shabbos, and Shabbos this week, we did a learn-a-thon. So we did a learn-a-thon where we started learning from 12:45 and we went straight till 5:30 with a couple of 5-minute breaks. But the learn-a-thon that we had, one of the things that we learned was something about Shabbos that we referred to. I just want to present this line over here. We refer to God as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, translated as the Holy One, blessed be He. And so one of the commentaries explains, why is it called the Holy One, blessed be He, when we refer to God? Well, in the beginning of creation it says, Vayivarech Elokim es Yom HaShvi'i, and God blessed the seventh day, Vayikadesho, so and He sanctified it. There's blessing and there's sanctification. We refer to God as HaKadosh, the Holy One, blessed be He, references two distinct points of God's mastery. One is the concept of Kedusha. He's entirely separate, and that ability to be entirely separate gives also the ability to give blessing as well. A human being has that similar power. When you become entirely separate, when you elevate yourself from that of everybody else, you also get this ability to also become one who is able to bless. Okay, so we refer to God as HaKadosh, the Holy One, blessed be He. So Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rav. At the time the Holy One, blessed be He, was about to create man, He created a division of ministering angels and said to them, "Would you advise me to create man?" And they said to him, "Master of the universe, why should we create him?" And he said, "They're going to do this and this." Then they said before God, "Master of the universe, what is mortal that you will remember him? And the Son of Man that you think of him?" You hear this at funerals, right? He then put his little finger among them and they were all burnt. At the same was with the second division. Third one, however, said, "Master of the universe, the first angels who protested, what did they accomplish? The whole world is yours, and all that is pleasing to you, you should do." Thereafter, at the flood and the generation of dispersion, whose deeds were criminal, the same ministering angels said before him, "Master of the universe, were not the first angels right in their protests?" And he answered, "And even unto old age I am the same, and even unto time of hoary hairs I will hear." Right? Zikna anihu vatseva ani esbol. God goes to the angels to find out what should we do. The angels don't understand the purpose of man. What's the point? Why create a being that has greater sense of free will, sense of physicality, sense of struggle? We're here for you. We're totally devoted to you. You don't need anything else. So the first group says, what's the point? What do you need this for? You need a man? You need a mortal human being that you think any value to him? And that's it, he burns them. So by the third group, they're like, I get it. Man's a good idea. I'm totally on your team, God. Let's create man. But then, when God destroys the earth, they say, what's the story? Weren't they right before? And God says, you're not going to understand the essence of man. So part of what the Medrash is hinting us over here is that when we look at man is a complex human being. It's complex in the fact that he has free will, and that free will is positive that he can reach higher levels than angels, but it's negative that he can also destroy himself and go against God. And the angels say, but what's the point? Isn't the goal to be able to connect to the oneness of God? God says, you're missing the point. You do it because it's almost entirely natural for you. But for them, they struggle. And just as I said, I'm going to create them in their goodness, I'll also destroy them in their badness. And you have to understand these angelic beings. You need to understand the value of man that he actually brings to the table. Okay, so there's again the angels are brought in over and over here in this idea.
Angels can sing or no?
Sure, they always sing.
Sing?
Sing.
Oh, sing.
Think.
I gotcha. Not
No.
sink
No.
and not sing. Think. Yeah. Well, we said that according to what we saw before is in their likeness and image means that they think. And they're thinking beings. So just like they...
Another rabbi told the angels is like animals, it's like dogs for God. And they lower than human being because human being can think. An angel just doing what the God tells them.
As we said, there is an element of free will that they have. But you're in there's one part you're saying over here that, again, their level of free will is limited. And so man has a greater ability. But to say they're lower, they're holier than man because they're entirely connected to God at all times. So it can't be lower. If man uses his free will and connects himself to God, then he will get higher than them. But they don't start out lower than man. They're already here. If we work on ourselves, we can get here. But the angels never are not lower than us. We could become higher than angels, but they don't start off lower than
I
man.
don't know, he said.
But
It's
during
only
the splitting
the
of the
people
sea,
who can
during the
think.
splitting of the sea, they argue with
Some
God
people can.
that why to save Jews and like why do we punish Egyptians but not Jews?
It wasn't the angels that said that. It was the sea that said that.
But isn't it sea?
It was the angelic power of the sea.
And angel of Egypt was arguing too.
Yeah.
So he could have argued, and so they think too. So somehow they're
Right.
doing stuff
They have
that
certain
Hashem
abilities
wants.
to think
They
correct.
cannot go against, but they can manipulate and say something to God that, hey, maybe that should be the way.
Right, there
And God
is
decides.
some sort of give and take that the angels have. There is some sort of give and take that they pray to God, they question God, why are you doing these things? We just saw over here. God asks them, what are you doing? And he says, why should I create man? And they give some answers over here. Right? So they have some sort of correlation over here in this
Angel
whole
have,
system.
actually created to help people?
Are they created to help people?
Yeah.
They're created to do God's bidding. They're created to do God's bidding.
God's
So
will,
do they-
whatever it is.
So that's, they are not created to help people.
What does that mean?
It means they created like for the purpose to help people to get higher.
Meaning, is an angel coming to you going like, is an angel coming going like, don't eat that, don't hit him? Is that what it is?
Save it, some in it.
Okay, but they could be come down into earth to save. Yes, for sure. We have those concepts throughout. That we just saw this last week that they came to save Lot, right? So they are coming in physical forms to do things, and sometimes they'll come even in spiritual forms to do things, right?
So angels are lawyers.
They, at some point, there are lawyers.
They provide
because
counsel to God, but ultimately the client tells them what to do and they do it.
if you're calling God a client,
Yeah, not to be derogatory.
Is it?
right? But meaning, but God is only going to them for their concepts. That in this case, it's a level of humility, not for
I mean,
not for anything else.
if the angels say we believe that this is the right thing to do, and Hashem says no, this is the right thing to do, then the angels say we're going to go do that because that's what you said. We provided you counsel, but now we're going to go do what you tell us to do.
Correct. That's what we would assume to that extent.
So they do the judgment when the people like die.
Well, we know that there's the judgments that are prosecuting angels, defending angels,
Right? Is it?
right? They're the spiritual
So,
forces
but
of a
is
human
that
being.
true? Like some people, really good ones, taken to be an angel to actually to
Again,
to
it's
understand
we don't really
people
see
more.
them as taken as angels.
Taken
They're not taken as angels.
To be there to
Their souls are there to aid and help us and things, but they're not taken as angels because angels is a different form of creation.
Okay.
Angels are created before men. God can't consult angels to create angels.
So what form of those souls which are there just to
What? They're not taking the form of an angel. They're
not-
taking the form of a neshama.
Okay, so it's a different story.
It's a different thing.
And what is the concept, like I heard something say every time you shake like,
You do a positive mitzvah, you create an angel.
oh, no, but that's interesting, but no, like if you shake like a man's hand, or if you come in contact, you create some kind of a spiritual spark.
A negative or positive spot.
Like, like they say, you should not like, shake hands with like men in general, women and men.
Okay.
Because every time you come in contact, something gets created. Like
I don't know if it's referring to an angelic force.
But what is that? I'm not.
Just negative energy.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
Bad angels, like not like demons, but like bad
Yeah, I heard,
angels,
like, some
mini angels.
Okay, so that's in general the concept of sin, that sin creates many angels. It's the concept of angelic beings that are created through the sins and through the actions that we do.
Okay.
There are spiritual forces that come through those things.
I just want to ask a question, maybe you can have an answer. What does it mean, Gite Meluchim and Gite Shelichim?
So it would mean that the angels are the good angels, right? That they're angelic forces that we're asking to carry out God's bidding properly, right? Or whatever certain tasks that they should enable it to carry out. You said Gite Malachim, and what was the other one?
Gite Shelichim.
Meaning that
Meluchim,
is a shalichim, right? So that the angel should be a shaliach. A shaliach is a messenger. That's what it's suggesting over here, that the angel should be a messenger in some way. So that for man,
Good angels.
that an angel should be a messenger for man to carry. There's a whole discussion in prayer whether you're supposed to be praying to angels or not. Right? It's a whole discussion in prayer. There's two schools of thought. So I follow the school of thought that we avoid praying to angels. So there are certain things that you have in liturgy that I don't say. Others will say it because it says certain things like, for example, it says in Shalom Aleichem prayer that you say on Friday night, it says Barchuni l'Shalom, bless me with peace. When you say Shalom Aleichem Malach Yasharis, greetings, O angels, whatever. So the third stanza, which is Barchuni l'Shalom, bless me in peace, is a reference that you're asking the angels to give you blessings. So one school of thought is that, that they're using the power of God's blessing to bring down, emanate through them to give to you. And the other school of thought is, no, we don't work with angels. Angels may carry out tasks for us. They may carry potentially our tefillah, our prayers, but we don't actually pray to them at all. And they don't have an ability to actually give us blessing. Blessing can only emanate from God and nothing else. So just sharing with you.
Skip that part?
I skipped the third paragraph for that. Yeah. Makes my meal much quicker. So
is that the reason to make it faster?
So that's it. Okay, let's just go to the Radak. It's a very long Radak, so we're going to try to skim through this Radak. Okay, the Radak says over here, and when God said, "Let us create man," in connection with all other matters created in the lower regions of the universe, God issues a directive to Earth, phrasing it in the third person, i.e., indirect modes such as Tadshei Earth, let Earth produce herbs. Let the waters teem. When it came to the creating of the human being, the last of the creatures composed several elements. He said, Naaseh, in the first person. Man was created last, as a sign that he is the crown jewel of creation, to make clear that all the creatures who preceded him in the order in which they were created are to serve as making life more pleasant and convenient for him. He is to be the master of them all. When the Torah wrote Naaseh in the first person plural mode, my father explained this as including the various elements, all of which had also been the product of God's creative activity, which had aimed at ultimately creating man. So, which means right now, without him saying anything now, those things that are going to create man is everything coming together. They were all his partners in that respect, supplying parts of the raw materials God used to make man. We may understand the entire line as if God has said to all of these raw materials, let us, you and me, together construct a human being. We find that our sages took a similar approach when they said that God consulted when created heaven and earth. Rashi explains that the plural in the word naaseh is accounted for by the fact that God consulted with the angels. They could be included in the we, seeing that both God and the angels share the fact that they are disembodied intelligences. God meant to imply that man would share an attribute with himself and the angels, namely an intelligence which was not dependent on the body. Okay, so Alex, to answer your question over here, what is this image that he's creating with man? Is an intelligence that man shares with God and with angels. A certain level of intelligence that God created angels with this intelligence, and now man is created with intelligence that is not dependent on the body. What do you mean it's not dependent on the body? And what's man? Man has a body. But when the soul leaves, the intelligence is still there. Get it? We are taught that the Torah wanted to teach us by wording these verses that whenever two people are disparate in stature, in stature, plan, and undertaking involving both them, the intellectually superior one should consult with the other before going ahead on his own. Okay? Furthermore, in the same paragraph, Rav Shmuel Bar Nachman and the name Rav Yonason says at the time when Moshe had come down to write the details of everything God had created in each of the 6 days, he balked when it came to this verse. He asked God, if this formulation were not to encourage heretics to think that God is a partner, God replied, write it down as I tell you. If someone wants to fool himself into believing that I must have a partner, let him delude himself. Okay? If the reason God called man Adam was that he was made from Adama, earth, this hardly seems to justify the name Adam, seeing that all other creatures on earth were also made from earth. That's what's amazing thing to see about the animals. They're also created from earth. God wanted to distinguish man both by name as well as by body and spirit. Everybody knows that all other living creatures on earth have as their raw material earth and dust. There was therefore no need to remind us that they were inextricably tied to earth. Why call man Adam if it's related to Adama? Everything comes from the Adama. It doesn't make any sense to call him that. So therefore he says, God called man, whose spirit originated in heaven, as distinct from the spirit of the animals, Adam, to prevent his being perceived as part of life in the celestial regions. You know why I called him Adam? You should realize that you're a lowly human being. You're not up there with everybody else. Sure, you have spiritual parts of you. Sure, you have intellect and brilliance. But you need to know that you're from Adam. You're coming from earth. You're a combination. You're a mixture of the two. People should not think the man was simply an angel who had come down to earth. Got that, Rita? People should not think that man was simply an angel who came down to earth. You're comprised of two things that come together. If we didn't give you the name Adam, then we think that you're just some spiritual being that came down to earth. Residents of the celestial spheres have not been equipped with a body at all. The basic elements from which they are formed are none of them raw materials found in our lower universe. All spiritual beings are entirely spiritual with nothing physical associated with them. We, man, has physical and a spiritual, but don't be
That's what I was asking. It has like two parts of the soul, right? Spiritual soul, and then
what we call spiritual soul, yeah. The nefesh bahamas, nefesh
soul.
elokis. The godlike soul and the physical soul, yes.
Physical soul and the spiritual
Correct,
soul.
correct. Right. Every such creature, such as shaitim, what we call demons, which do possess a body, are totally different from man. We can't see them. Demons, though superficially similar to man, have been constructed from a fifth element, not from one of the four elements. At least this is what we have been told by the scientists of our time. Fascinating. When the Creator formed man using ingredients that are at home in the celestial regions as well as ingredients which are common in our domain, he called this creature Adam in spite of the fact that he has spirit originated in heaven. Okay? Because you live on earth, we're calling you Adam so that you should come to that recognition that you are a physical human being, even though you have a spirit that comes from a spiritual side. Let me just skip. Hence, a name that reflects man's predominant concern with earthly matters is quite appropriate. Okay, we're calling you Adam because you're going to be focused oftentimes on your physical earthly life, even though you have a goal and a role to focus on your spiritual life, but we're calling you Adam. So it's interesting that, let me just see over here how the quotes in the verse. Where has he quote man? He goes, and he created man. And then later,
Can I ask you a question?
hold on a second. Okay, so yeah, good question. Question, Rita.
Can I ask you, is that right? This is, I just heard that people are having the physical soul until 12 or 13, until they reach the...
Yetzer hara. They don't have a positive yetzer, positive inclination. They have a yetzer hara. Everyone is born with an evil inclination, but the yetzer tov, the positive inclination, doesn't enter into a human being till they hit bar bat mitzvah.
So this is a part of the spiritual soul?
It's part of the spiritual positivity. Well, we'll explain it in the natural sense is like this. When a person's growing up until they reach bar bat mitzvah, their focus is on themselves. Their natural tendency is to focus on themselves and not to think outside themselves. That's their natural tendency, like the babies focus on themselves, right?
So this is a physical soul, right?
That's a physical soul, but no. There's two things. There's a nefesh bahamis, physical soul, animalistic soul, and nefesh elokis, spiritual soul, which are put in the beginning. Then there's what we call yetzer tov and yetzer hara, which is your inclination that leads you to focus on yourself or focus outside of yourself. That comes when you hit the bar mitzvah. Let's just close up over here as we're over time. I'm not going through much of this Radaf. You can take it for yourself as well. If you go to the next page towards the bottom, and it says, second to last paragraph, that man is going to control over these things. The species mentioned here, the most elusive for man to demonstrate his control. So what we're talking about man in creation, number one, is how God created man, and number two is the concept of man's control. And therefore, that is the goal of the first chapter, is to show how man will have control. It requires extreme intelligence and skill for man to effectively control either the fish of the sea or the birds in the air. Both of these categories of creatures do not share the same habitat on earth with man. This is the reason why the Torah mentions these unlikely candidates for man's control before the domesticated beast, control over which is something we have no real problems with. The Torah, so to speak, tells us that if man can bring his authority to bear on the birds of the sky and the fish in the sea, he can obviously exert his control over those species that share the same habitat as he, i.e. the dry land. Okay? And lastly over here, they see in the term a veiled warning to man on the next page. Ridia, Yerida, we saw in Rashi that if you do what you're supposed to do, you'll overtake them. If not, you'll become subservient to the animal. A veiled warning to man. As long as man qualifies for the description of Bitsalmenu, Bidmusenu, in the likeness of the image of God, he enjoys his control over the inferior creatures on earth. Should he forfeit the right, and he gives up on this idea, as described in Bitsalmenu, in the image and likeness, he suffers a yerida. He will decline, not only in this spiritual sense, but also in the manner in which the animals relate to him by accepting his authority. In commenting on the meaning of this expression, the sages say that just as man's soul is pure, so his body is meant to be pure as well. Just as his soul is holy, so his body is supposed to be holy. Just as his soul is able to see without being seen, so too his body is able to see without being seen. Just as his soul puts up with the problems of the whole world, so his body has to endure all the problems involving physicality. Furthermore, in order to explain the dual nature of man, our sages explain that God himself had said to himself, if I make him out of matter found only in the upper regions of the universe, he will live forever. If on the other hand, if I make him matter extant only in the lower regions, he will never attain an enduring afterlife. Therefore, God decided to make man out of a mixture of matter found in the heavens and on earth. And if man sins, he will die. If he will resist sin, he will actually continue to live. Okay, so that is the general idea of what you have on your notes. Let me just see if there's anything else I need to close up with, just in this idea. There are some commentaries which we did mention, the possibility that the angels themselves were actually creating man with God, right? That God said, I'm going to consult with you, and perhaps they have some element. Rav Saadia Gaon says it's illogical that a being which was itself created can go ahead and turn and create. Moreover, if angels were given the ability, then man too should also be able to create other types of beings as well. He further argues that such an assertion would undermine proof of God's existence, since his creation, God's creation, is what testifies to his being. Okay, so that's that. What else did I want to share? There was a kliyakar, but I'm not going to get to it now. So let's just that are some of the comments. Okay, so let's just get to some closure over here. Some closure that we have is, number one, man is created at the same time as animals and other things. Same time. For some reason, they're created at the same time as man as other things. And part of it is going to be that you're similar to them because you're also coming from the earth. But I'm also letting you know that you're there to actually take over them. And that's going to be one of your roles if you recognize you're supposed to be Bitsalmenu Kidmusenu. In our image, Tali, I don't have an answer to your question of Kidmusenu. So I don't have an answer to that, of our likeness. We did see the concept of, again, we're trying to refute heretics. So it's as if we give them a bone. We throw something at them so they can try and find ways to not have to follow the will of God and to try to prove their own thing, but they're always going to have an answer alongside them. The answer of them will always be next to them. We also learned the concept that in the Bechor Shor, that in our image means in an awe-inspiring image. That it's not a physical form of man, it's an awe-inspiring image. The Rashbam presented the idea that's in the image of angels, and then we saw the fact that when God creates man, there's an angelic being. There's also a creation that has some element of thought and some element of free will, and similar man is going to be the same. The angels, as the Talmud told us, were trying to have the discussion with God of what the purpose of man is, but we see that this duality, as we ended, the duality was that man is not entirely living forever, yet he gets olam haba. So giving him like the image of spirituality, of the likeness of God, gives him the opportunity of eternal life, which is what we call olam haba, the world to come, but physicality, which gives him the opportunity for death, and the potential of the next world to come. So he's a mixture of both, and as we saw from the Radak, combined from all elements. Could even mean when he said, let us, it's all the other things that I've created, says God, all those elements are going to come together to be able to create man. And again, as we saw before, there's a level of humility that we have to learn. It's more important to worry about what we need to learn and how we can change our lives than to worry about what the heretics are going to potentially say. And therefore, more important to teach us a lesson of humility than to worry about what some errant groups might try to prove for themselves. And therefore, for us, we take every lesson in the positive, that it should be to the level of humility. That's where we're stopping here for tonight.
I'm curious, why were the birds and the fish created on a separate day?